I'm Alana Harrelson, and I'm a photographer and environmentalist born and raised in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. My project, Generational Waste, focuses on overconsumption and accumulation of unnecessary stuff prevalent in both my home life and society as a whole. For as long as I can remember, my family has struggled with stuff. While we never explicitly acknowledged that we were hoarders, it was always pretty obvious. Hoarding was something my family and I tried to hide away and ignore as much as we could. For my parents, they'd rather be considered collectors than the H word, as they call it. My project first began when I realized all I could think about was the crushing weight of stuff I felt. My family is maximalist. Their homes filled with possessions they've collected throughout their lives and stuff that's been passed down from older generations. In our world, we are so tied to the nostalgia an object can bring, we keep it until we die, even if it serves no real purpose for us other than reminding us of a good memory. This becomes an issue when we keep too much. When we have too much stuff with sentimental value that we keep everything, even large things like houses and cars, which is what my family does. When my parents pass, how could I possibly get rid of my dad's beloved 49 race car I spent so much time in as a child? Or what about the other 21 cars they own? What do I do with those? As I worked through this project and my own emotions, I turned the camera on myself and my family members for the first time. I soon realized it was much easier to document the stuff my grandma owned than stuff within my own room in parents' house, but it had to be done to show how personal this project is. Showing my own stuff and my parents' stuff was difficult because we can still be judged for exposing such a sensitive topic we've hidden away for years. I learned there was a big difference between showing the possessions of an old family member who already passed away and couldn't defend themselves and the stuff my parents and I currently own. Over this past year, my parents and I struggled through the process of trying to clean up two family members' houses, which is where this project first began and really took form. Clearing out my grandma's house was expected and something we knew needed to be done since she died in 2011, but my Uncle Dan's death and house disaster was unforeseen for us last summer. It was also something I didn't know would impact my project so heavily. Just by visiting Dan's house one day, seeing what happened, and taking probably 1,000 or so photos. Shortly after Dan's death in June, his house was broken into nightly and mysteriously caught on fire one day, burning four of his cars, part of his house, and lots of his stuff. Most of my photos aren't extensively framed or set up. I'm shooting in between handing my parents stuff and moving things out of the way. So I take quick shots, but take more time to edit them afterwards to work on framing, positioning, lighting, and color. As I was sorting through my images from that day, I looked at the bottom photo and instantly remembered the top photo of my Uncle Dan that my mom had asked me to enhance shortly after his death, since it was a low quality, poorly lit cell phone photo from 2015. Unfortunately, my family and I will likely never know all that happened to him in his house, but can only come up with wild theories to resolve some of our suspicions, like maybe someone was living in his house when he died and could have had something to do with his death, as well as the repeated break ins and fire. Walking through Uncle Dan's house is eerie now. The floors are littered with trash, clothing, drawers,
Hold on.
overturned furniture, and
Hold
more
on.
Uncle Dan and intruders left behind. Everything is covered with a black dust from smoke. In some areas, I'm up to my knees or waist in stuff. I wear two masks to keep out the burnt, moldy, and chemical smell left in the house. I wear gloves and boots to keep a protective layer between this house and myself. I'm separate but involved. I'm both comfortable and uncomfortable in this space. I want to save everything I can to avoid things being unnecessarily wasted. My family and I take things worth saving with us, but we already have so much stuff. Generational waste piles up. I think one of the most enjoyable parts about photography is finding things you didn't see before hidden in photos. Since most of my images are in places full of stuff, it's hard to really comprehend everything you're looking at in the moment, and easier to dissect and understand when you can focus on one photo or one view of a setting for a longer period of time. I understand that in my project, my family members are silent. Some aren't able to speak because they're dead, but others are still alive, breathing, and hoarding. I speak for them and speak for myself because I'm the photographer. I tell their stories because who else will? Hoarding is the ugly elephant in the room at family gatherings. The waste crisis is real and something that I see and think about every day. We need to control our consumption before it controls us. I often think back to my childhood. I had no concept of money or wasting resources buying whatever clothing and toys I wanted. I've since seen through the charade of consumerism. Now that I know the truth of what goes into everything we buy, the flaws in recycling and waste management systems, and how much stuff occupies landfills, I no longer want to be a willing participant in a linear society. Buying something new is no longer fun like it used to be when I was little. Everything I buy, I'm cursed with thinking about its entire life cycle. Remember, someone will have to get rid of this when you die. Do you really need it? Which is a morbid way to think about it, but that's why it's a blessing and a curse. I'm glad I've become so aware of the truth of consumption, but it's hard looking around and seeing people endlessly spend money on things they don't need, just to throw them away or dump them at Goodwill in a few years. All of this can be avoided if more of us focused on cultivating a circular economy, where little is wasted, more is reused. Through my work, I want my audience to understand the extreme consequences of overconsumption and accumulating stuff. As an environmentalist, I constantly struggle with the issue of waste and trying to live sustainably. In our society, we frequently waste things without a second thought. It clears our conscience since the item is out of sight, out of mind, for us at least. In everyday life and through the media we consume, we don't see the evident costs of our consumption and how damaging it is to our planet. In our homes and on this earth, waste is resilient. You need to dig yourself out of it while you still can, or you'll get buried. Thank you.